I'm thinking about resigning from my federal career at age 55 within the next 6 months. Understand there's some real challenges involved with my situation, and I want to make sure I'm thinking through everything in the right way. Can I run my numbers by you? That's the question we want to address in the video here today. And this is a good question. We're going to take a look at this federal employee's situation in some detail here to address some of the challenges, the opportunities that he's going to be facing, as well as kind of lay out what the future might look like if he decides to leave or stay on for a few extra years. Okay. Now, this question is coming up all across the federal community with federal employees retiring a little bit earlier under deferred resignation programs, combination with VERA in a lot of cases. But in this situation, this federal employee is just it's an untenable situation. He wants to move on from his role. Office has changed. It's kind of an untenable situation. And so considering going out at 55, which would just be a resignation at this point, which carries some real implications. So we're going to get into the numbers. We're going to take a look at this case study here. But first, I got a few important things I want to touch on. Leaving your federal career has some serious considerations you've got to take into account, okay? You've likely worked long and hard for these federal benefits, and there's some nuanced rules around eligibility. You want to make sure that you understand how everything works together. You do the research on this so that you make the right decisions. They're going to set you up for long-term success, okay? It's really important because there is a lot of nuance here. Second thing, the job market has been tough, right? So we know with all the changes, there's been a lot of job applicants flooding the market for a few amount of positions. And so a lot of federal employees that were relying on finding that next source of income have found it a little more difficult than maybe they'd anticipated when they took their retirement offer. So consider that, right? Do your research around what the market looks like for your specific role, what you'd be going after, and what your opportunities, how you may find those opportunities. Third thing, opportunity costs. There's always opportunity costs. We've got the financial, which are lost income, lost ability to grow your assets, and the long-term implications of that. That's the numbers, right? But then of course, there's beyond the numbers, opportunity costs around our time, which is really our most valuable resource, okay? In situations like we're talking about here today, it has to play a role in making a decision, balancing the numbers and beyond the numbers against one another to make the best decision, okay? Because if you're in a situation where your mental well-being is being challenged. So let's take a look at some of the details here. I'll give you a little bit of a setup. We've got a 55-year-old employee, 25 years of service. We're gonna call him Terry. Terry's been a great federal employee, but of course things have changed recently and he's kind of considering his options. Current salary, GS-14 step 5 is right around $161,000 a year. We've calculated his high 3 rate around $156,000 a year, okay? So that's kind of the setup from that standpoint. On the balance sheet, Terry's got a pretty straightforward balance sheet. He's got $25,000 in savings, about $850,000 in a pre-tax TSP, owns a home in Northern Virginia worth around $750,000. He's got a mortgage on that house for $185,000. Now, we're not going to incorporate that home equity as part of the retirement income plan at this point. That could change in the future. That's subsequent planning meetings when we're going to be addressing items like that. For now, we're just taking a look at, some of these challenges and what the numbers look like on our retirement income worksheet based on first pension, Social Security, the TSP money, okay? Terry currently saves around 20% of his income, and that's mostly in the form of TSP contributions, maxing that out with a catch-up, so around $31,000 a year. Also, tax footprint comes out to be around 20% as well. So doing the math on that matches up with what Terry told us. He needs about $8,000 a month to keep up his lifestyle, meet his expenses, okay? That's step one in our retirement income worksheet. How much do we spend? What's, on the monthly basis, and then what's our annual spend, kind of multiplying that by 12. So $8,000 a month, $96,000 a year. That's kind of what we're solving for. Terry's got the first pension, right? He will be eligible for a pension, but not right away. He does not qualify for an immediate annuity, right? Because he doesn't meet MRA plus 10, which is the minimum requirement for an immediate annuity. And that would even come with a reduction. Terry's 55, so that means he's not eligible. The first availability to take a pension would be when he turns 57, would be under MRA plus 10. That would come with a reduction, 5% a year for every year he's under the age of 62. The earliest he could take an unreduced pension would be age 60 because he'd have 20 years of service, which would meet that requirement. And so that's 5 years off from where he is today, okay? So let's look at the calculation, the gross calculation. He's got 25 years of service. I told you the high 3s rate around $156,000 a year. We've got a 1% multiplier. So $39,123, that's our gross number that we're gonna be working with before any reductions would apply. Okay, now let's talk about some of the implications here. These are really important. At 55, he's going out under a deferred pension. With a deferred pension, that means, as I already said, you're not eligible for an immediate annuity. You're not eligible to get that income right away. You'd have to wait until, like I said, 57 would be his first opportunity. That's his minimum retirement age. There would be a reduction in that circumstance. With a deferred pension, that also means no FEHB. So he would not be eligible to continue his federal employee health insurance benefit, which is really valuable. And it's a reason so many feds stay on until they're eligible for that immediate annuity. Okay. Also, FEGLI would go away. It's not something he's currently enrolled in, but if that's a consideration for you, know that's how it works. Talked a little bit about MRA plus 10 and the 25% reduction in this case. Okay. 60 and 20 would be his first opportunity for an unreduced pension. There is no special retirement supplement available in this circumstance as well. COLAs do not begin until age 62, but that's across the board for all federal employees. Okay, so he's got a 7-year gap where inflation is going to take its toll on that $39,000 pension. We're going to look at what that does in just 1 minute, but last thing I'll mention here is the rule of 55 is still in play. So if he goes out at 55 or older, would be able to access his TSP if he needed to take some distributions from that without a penalty. So real quick, let's talk about 7 years inflation. Let's say inflation runs 3% on that 39,123. So over a 7-year period, that equates to that 39,123 grows to the equivalent of $48,116. So you could think about it as losing around $9,000 or so in purchasing power over that 7-year period. All right, so that's the first pension. Social Security is the second piece of our retirement income worksheet. We're not going to touch on it in the video today. He's not eligible until 62. That's a 7-year period from now. Whether or not 62 is even the right time to take Social Security is another question. That's going to help solve a lot of the income gap that we're going to uncover here as we complete the retirement income worksheet. But again, it's not coming available for at least 7 years from when he's planning to retire. TSP money. So let's look at portfolio income. That's the next part. So he's got $850,000 in a pre-tax TSP. Let's say that thing grows at 7% for the next 2 years. At 57, he considers tapping it. That $850,000 would grow to $973,165 at age 57. If you take a 4% distribution off of that as part of your annual income, that would give us an additional $38,926 before taxes. Okay. Now let's say he lets that grow until age 60. So he's going to go for the unreduced pension. Okay. At age 60. So 850 times 7% times 5 years, that comes up to 1.192 million. Okay. So pretty big bump there over the next 3 years. 4% off of that gives us $47,686 a year in portfolio income. Okay. So let's clean this up. Let's add it up a little bit. At age 55, when he retires, what retirement income is available? Really nothing outside of TSP income. You could take 4% off your $850,000 and that'll give you $34,000 pre-tax. Okay. Is that the best thing to do? Probably not, right? Tapping your TSP at age 55. If he waits until 57, he could take that pension. That's his first available option, but that 39,123 is going to be reduced by 25%. That's a big bump. That's a big cut. That brings us down to $29,342 plus your TSP money, we said, brings us out to a total of $68,268 pre-tax. If you take tax off that, let's say he's at 20%, brings you down to $54,614. Our income need, $8,000 a month, $96,000 a year. You can see there's about a $40,000 gap that we would need to make up. Not a terrible situation, but not a great situation. If you wait till 60, avoid that reduction, which is a permanent reduction to your first pension. Okay. Once you lock that in, that's it. But so he waits till 60, 39,123 plus his portfolio money. That gives me 86,809 a year pre-tax. Let's say he's at that same 20% tax rate effectively. It's probably going to be a little higher than that, but so that brings it down to 69,444. You're closing that gap a little bit, but we can still see there's $25,000 or so income need that we need to make up. So that's kind of how the situation would play out: 55, 57, age 60. And then you still have a gap until Social Security kicks in at the earliest of age 62. So in this circumstances, the numbers they don't look great. Okay. And I think Terry understands that. The plan would be to get some kind of a job. That's the challenge right now. We don't know what that market's going to look like for him, what the availability of income is going to be with the job that he's able to land. It's more fun when these videos come out and, things kind of line up and we can meet those needs through the pension, through Social Security, and through TSP. But in this case, he is taking the more difficult path because 55 is an earlier retirement, which presents these very specific challenges. And one challenge we didn't even really address, the extent of it, if FEHB goes away, does that increase his $8,000 monthly spend? It might, because we know health insurance on the open market can be significantly more expensive than what the FEHB cost is, especially if you have the agency kicking in a good chunk of that premium. All right, so hopefully this is helpful in getting you to think through situations like this. I hope you found some value here. Would love to hear what you're working on. So if you have a case like this, you want to look at the numbers, send it our way. We'd love to take a look at it and be a resource for you. Remember, you don't have to make these big decisions alone. And if you did find some value here, we'd love if you give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.